insight onto, wow, AI can really come and change your life and give you this information that otherwise would take you a very long time to put together and figure out on your own.
Wow, fantastic. Radhika.
Thank you. So AI for me is not what we picture in movies where you see the robots, and I see it as a tool that helps you become more efficient, bring down cost in business, and actually have a competitive edge. So the big thing that I remember of AI was I was still at university. This was just after the 2008 crisis, where the US market was now looking for the next frontier. And at that point, China was seen as the growing market where the next wave of growth was meant to come from, and it did. But what happened was that the Chinese caught wind of this, and they decided to run a global scam whereby they decided to, so these companies in China decided to reverse merger on the New York Exchange. So there's 500 companies on the New York Exchange who, some of them are not active. So what these companies did was reverse merger, and they decided to raise a lot of capital from the pension market in the US, other retailers, hedge funds, etc. And in order for the US to be able to do due diligence on the Chinese market, it was very difficult, and it still is relatively difficult today. And in what really happened in reality was that if fund managers like BlackRock, etc., would go over and to do due diligence on these companies. Overnight, you'd see a bus of workers come in, lights go on, factory is up and running. The investor day happens. People are convinced that these companies are generating 500,000 tons of paper, for example. And the day that the investor meetings went, they actually went home. And what was really interesting was that this was a global scam on different levels, but at the time, data was not available. Fast forward a few years, I joined BlackRock, where I'm on data, and I always position, we are the China fund, and I always used to position to the portfolio manager, how do you use data today to make sure you're able to make accurate decisions in your day-to-day investing? And turns out that now they use GeoPlakia. Is there enough infrastructure to say that they're generating 5,000 tons of paper every day? Is there enough cars or lorries and transport going up and down? So actually the use of AI to me has allowed you to have a better competitive edge, bring down costs, because you can imagine sending your team over to China and still getting false results could be quite costly to your business. And lastly, it makes you more efficient. So for me, that was the first introduction I had in more of an applicable way, which really caught my eye, and I thought it was a story worth sharing.
Wow, fantastic example right there. Thank you. Ayako.
So me, AI is really what everyone knows here, Siri, Alexa. But before we go to Siri, Alexa, so what we do as a company, we help people at scale. Helping people at scale is really difficult if what you're providing is very curated, personalized advice. So we help individuals figure out what their investment goals are. If you had a one-on-one session with a professional licensed advisor, what would that session look like? It would be, my name is Ayako, the advisor's name is Opio, right? So Ayako goes to Opio, you know what, I have some money, I would want to invest it for my child's education. How much should I put away? Where should I invest whatever I've put away? So Opio, the AI, is able to tell you, you know what, you're planning for 10 years in your child's education in 10 years from now. It's probably going to be a lot more expensive, but this is what you should put away. So can that conversation be remodeled and offered to the mama mboga, right? To, there are no mama mbogas here. But to anyone that can actually use such information, benefit from it. And so if we can build not a Siri, not an Alexa, but an Opio that provides professional investment guidance, that is AI.
Wow, that's really powerful, because what essentially you're saying, advisory services that was only available to an exclusive clique of people, very high profile clients. You bring it to Mama Mboga. In Kenya nowadays, we call it the hustler nation. You can bring it to the hustlers at a very tailored and personalized level. That's the power of AI. Wow. I want us to get quickly down the questions so that we can be able to involve everybody else. What are the areas, two areas that come to your mind when you think about the traditional investment space and how it's likely to shift because of AI? Again, I'll start from here.
All right, sounds
Ladies
good.
first.
So I love what Aiko has shared. It's very similar to the problem we try to solve at Africa's Pocket in giving this very personalized advice to people that actually, is relatable to what it is that they're trying to get done. And so when I think about the space where the investment space will change in a couple of years, advisory really comes to mind. I live part-time in Kenya and part-time in Canada. And the app that I use to invest, Wealthsimple in Canada, I've never spoken to a person. Yet I have this plan that I follow that adjusts based on what's happening in my life. You tell the app you've gotten married and it kind of makes an adaptation on what it is that you're trying to do. I'm very excited to see that coming to us here at home in Africa and taking into account the difference in our culture and our context. For example, a lot of people are taking care of their siblings. That's a cost that might not be relevant to somebody who's living in Canada, in the US, but here is important and very real. And so I'm very excited to see investment advice become customized, personalized at scale, leveraging technology, but also taking into account the context that we're in at the moment. So that really comes to mind. That's something that I'm super excited about. And then I think something else that would be useful is in understanding insights, helping people understand how are they doing. So when we talk to customers in Africa's Pocket, we do a lot of one-on-one, we do a lot of supporting on an individual level as well as through technology, because we've understood that you can't take out the human touch 100%. Somebody said earlier, finance is emotional. It's very, very difficult to tell somebody, put away your 10,000, put away your 20,000, and you're not explaining to them where it's coming from. And so that tool that I mentioned earlier help them see where the money will come from, but somebody still has to go ahead and give comfort to that choice they're making, help them understand what the future will look like, help them believe that the investment they're making in is solid and is, they're not going to lose their money like we've seen in several other scams. So I see the insight side of investment management and advisory becoming very automated through technology, but yet it still needs to have that human touch for it to, have that impact and actually get somebody to take action and do the next step.
Fantastic. Wow. Personalized investment advisory and personalized investment insights. Fantastic.
Yeah, so the way we use AI today at Dovu, so it's actually already on our continent, is to really help a user understand what type of investor they should be and the amount of risk they should take based on their current lifestyle. So let's say that Valentine came onto Dovu. She's asked a series of questions, and behind that is an algorithm that takes in a lot of data to understand if you're saving for a long-term goal, and you're all CFAs in the room, so you know how investment profiling works. We're able to very quickly, again, keeping costs low, so I'm not hiring lots of financial advisors, efficiency in I'd say about 30 seconds, you can understand based on your lifestyle what type of investor you should be. And that sort of spans on 3 portfolios, which is conservative, balanced, and aggressive. So we can see the application of AI really improving the asset management industry. And I think more on a macro level, AI is already being applied in front, middle, and back offices. And businesses and big corporations will be using this to bring down cost. And so some good examples, just to bring life to what I'm saying, is Front end is very much investment trading, portfolio management. So you can use AI to sift through large amounts of big data. As you've heard, big data is the new oil. So, you need people to, AI to actually sift through that sort of data so you can have a competitive edge. Asset managers around the world globally are already doing this. There are specific funds set up that actually use AI to determine investment decisions. It's already there, it's being used, which is great. And what I would love to see is the asset management industry in Africa take that up, because we are in a unique position. Yeah, being on the continent, we understand different things about our businesses that are very different to the West. And that means that in that chaos, there is actually opportunity of where you can make significant returns. And then moving more to more traditional back-end roles, AI has been used to update client records. AI is being used to tidy up data as well as error reconciliation. So these are just some examples of where AI is really changing the asset management industry. And the key thing that it's really making an impact on today is automating processes so that our workforce can really now think about how to add that additional layer of service that can lead to more revenue rather than doing monotonous tasks that can be done efficiently with a tool. So I'm very excited to see how our asset managers, the regulators, really take AI to the next level. And it's a space to watch out for.
Wow. So I've taken that out. Investor profiling is changing. Transaction costs are coming down. Data cleanup is automated. And of course, even updating client data is automated. Fantastic.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is just add on to what my colleagues have gone over. But importantly, I think there's just like two major streams, two major areas of potential applications, and some have already been started. These projects that using AI to chase down superior returns or minimize risk. So that's like one category. So this is in relatively much more dynamic, huge markets where there are oodles and oodles of information. And so, of course, we have to remember from a definitional perspective what AI is. We're just really trying to make a machine simulate human intelligence. So, first of all, the human should be able to do some rudimentary task. For example, provide guidance, provide advice, look at data, and then determine that this is a profitable opportunity or not a profitable opportunity. This is a way to just down the return. And then you program a machine to do that so that you can go and drink beer, I think. Beer, did I say? yeah, free up that time to do slightly more sophisticated things. Drinking a beer, I don't think you can program a machine to drink beer. So, but also another area is behavioral in a sense. So these actions that we undertake, but maybe they are not necessarily as helpful to our meeting our objectives. They might even, in the extreme, be detrimental. So in a way, AI could be deployed to help nudge the target audience, so you or all of you here in the room, or everyone that is using a particular app to nudge them to undertake particular behavior. You know what? You have just been spending from your wallet for the last 3 months and you haven't saved anything. Could you potentially be, if you continue doing that, this is where you're going. And if you only could do a little bit. So basically nudging behavior. And so deploying a machine to be your grandmother, right? to be your grandmother, reorienting you to take a certain desired activity. So that is how I see AI evolving and could potentially be used in the future of investment.
Interesting. Yeah. So routine components of the investment process will be taken up by AI. There is also this, like for example, we have this product called Chums, when you're out there, you're having dinner or you're having your drinks, and it's time to pay. Just when you want to M-Pesa the pay bill number, it prompts you and say, by the way, we see how you spend some 5,000 bob. Why don't you pay yourself some 500 shillings? And when you say yes, it takes you straight to your M-Pesa pin, and 500 shillings of your M-Pesa goes into your investment account. So good behavior triggers.
Exactly.
That's really powerful. Thank you for that. And I know, I mean, I'm moving a little bit fast because of time. There's a lot more we could discuss on this, but especially when it comes to how will investment firms interact with customers going forward, powered by AI. But we'll come back to that later. So we know that AI cannot answer all our questions. It's people led, and therefore it's not necessarily replacing us human beings. So it definitely has some limitations. Can we explore what some of these limitations are? I'm going to start from the gentleman this time round. We're trying to make it fair, right?
AI can drink beer, can have a conversation. Yeah, so there are limitations, particularly in our market. Specifically, let me just go back to the first point that I made, where you deploy AI to chase returns in relatively illiquid markets. That might be a fool's errand in our market. But there might be other places where AI would be deployed, which is essentially being able to provide that guidance. But there's also certain limitations. So before I started Zeno, I was actually in a PhD program, and one of my research areas was natural language processing. And so I was trying, on my project, I was trying to build the OPIO, right? Providing professional investment guidance. But you see the hard problems where the way language is used in even Nairobi, slightly different from the way language is used in Kampala. Slightly different. It's even further removed from the way language is used in, what's a remote city here? I'll call it Entebbe, right? I was going to say something else. But so the way different people use language is different. So there's those nuances which introduce limitations. The way the Mamamboga will understand certain phrasing is different from the way we will understand it here. So that obviously limitations that could be difficult to overcome, but then what we should do is to just start it. Those refinements will subsequently come.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, and AI, I mean, it's being used globally now, but we've just started to see the limitations come through in data. So one of the key things is that the AI algorithm is configured by us. We're humans. So the AI is only as good as the algorithm, and that algorithm might actually have some biases. So there's a really neat example. Facebook they coded an algorithm to get all the hate speech away. And the people that were coding the algorithm only said, get rid of hate speech for white people. And actually, it got rid of all the hate speech for white people on the Facebook platform, but it kept hate speech against Black children. And so the AI is only as smart as the person configuring it. And unfortunately, everyone has a bias. You know, we've grown up in different environments. We all have our environmental biases. And that's the key limitation I see with AI. Secondly, AI is only as good as its data. So the importance of big data around the world is becoming more and more increasingly apparent to everybody. But one thing the African continent, we've not done well, and I've seen this when we were setting Dovu, is our data is not well defined. So what do I mean by that? It just means that we have data, but it's not organized. When something is not organized, you can't use it. And so even if we want to bring, so when we do portfolio construction, we would like to use market data of what's happening in the market today. We don't have that data, and we're continuously finding ways to collect it. So if anybody in the audience has mastered this, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a chat about it. But the idea is that your AI is only as good as your data. And the last limitation, I think, is guys, we're all human and we need a human touch. For example, with the pandemic, there have been so many businesses that have been struggling with cash flow. If we had put an AI behind these loans that were given out, about 90% of these individuals would be in default. And the only thing that actually saved a lot of these businesses that are now starting to thrive and contributing to the economic growth of our country is because they had a relationship manager sitting there, understanding what their story is, understanding what the human element part of it is, knowing that over the last 15 years, these people have been good paymasters. So I see AI as do our jobs better, but there will definitely be room for us. And the key thing is AI cannot tell you how they got to that decision. It'll say, okay, this is yes, this is no, but they can't say why. And for us as humans, why is so important. And it really shapes our decision making and investment strategy in day-to-day relationships. So yeah, there's definitely some big limitations with AI.
So AI is here to empower us, not to replace us,
Exactly.
as opposed to so many people's concerns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Valentine?
Yeah, I will echo what has been said. It's really around AI is for us to use to serve ourselves. I was reading and I came across this analogy. AI is like a hammer. You can use it to create something, to build something, or, put the wood and the nails together, or you can use it to destroy something. It's really about how the human being is using it and the input that it's getting. So garbage in, garbage out, and I think that's the limitation of AI. And I'll go back to that statement that was made by, I believe, by Keith. He said finance is emotional, and that's something that we can't run away from.
Yeah.
We really have to have that human touch there. There's context, there's empathy that helps us make these decisions. Where something may look black and white to an AI, there's a nuance in there that only a human being can capture.
Wow, fantastic. It's a very juicy conversation. um, let's move to the next question. When you think about the next 10 years in the investment space, what would be the 2 or 3 greatest value adds by investment professionals going forward? Can start from here.
Let's start here. Greatest value adds. So I think the world we're moving into is one where the functions will stay the same. There'll still be client relationships, there'll still be marketing, there'll still be operations, but they will need a different skill set. So even now, when I think about hiring for my company and I think about hiring a marketing person, I'm no longer asking, do they understand, brand colors and the more traditional things that used to be valuable. Now I'm asking, do they understand how to interpret the data that we're getting from the social media platforms? Do they understand how to change our content to kind of keep up with whatever it is that the market wants to see? And so I think when you think about the different aspects of investment management, whether it's customer support, being a dealer, whether it's portfolio construction, it's about asking, do you have the skill set that's keeping up with the times of the future? And you can't ignore data right now. I don't think there's any single function in investment management and otherwise really that doesn't require you to use information, interpret it, categorize it, and then make decisions and insights from that. So equipping yourself with that skill set, I think, is the most important thing, regardless of what function you're interested in.
So since most of our technical skills are very process driven, they are likely to be impacted by AI, and therefore it will tend to push us more towards client relationships and those kind of things. That
maybe I would say, even if you're on the operation side or in back office, asking yourself, how is it that you can equip yourself to automate those processes, to be the person who feeds the AI that automates those processes?
yes.
Because you understand it pretty well if you're already in that function. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think in 10 years' time, the best outcome would be we are able to bring down cost as a result of applying AI. And then we bring down the cost of doing business because, to be honest, the cost of doing business in Africa is much higher than doing it in the West because of broken infrastructure. When we were setting up Dovu and doing our pricing of how can we be profitable, I understood why the asset management industry does charge 2% for a cash fund. And just to give you an example, in the States or even in the UK, a cash fund charges 0.01 basis points, right? And the reason being is because we have a lot of work to do. And so like other industries, we can potentially use AI to leapfrog some of the processes that we are implementing today by actually just educating ourselves to understand what type of AI applications exist today in our asset management industry, and how do we bring that here before doing a process that comes in the normal steps of evolution of moving from, being at home, calling people individually, and actually now using digital. What else can we do in order to make sure that in 10 years' time we're, meeting the investment space and features that they have in the West? And I think that's really a critical question to ask ourselves today, because we are at the growth stage of our asset management industry. And the last thing I would say is just educating ourselves on AI. So seeing it as a tool that can help you make more money for your business rather than it's going to take over my job. And I think there's different views across different continents about AI and what it means. But actually, if you really look at it, it is a tool to help us do our jobs better. So in 10 years' time, I'd like to see us being at the forefront where we're more efficient because we've applied AI. The funds that we offer, we're able to charge lower fees so that more goes into the pockets of our investors who work really hard for their money. And lastly, as an industry in Kenya, East Africa, it gives us a competitive edge, and money from the US is now flowing into Africa, trying to cultivate our ecosystem and our GDP. So that would be my 10-year big vision.
Thank you. Wow. That sounds very enticing for customers. Aiko?
Yeah, so in the next 10 years, unfortunately, I am part of the industry here, the investment industry. But I really question what is the utility of the investment industry to the mama mboga, really? What use are we to the askari, to the
hustlers,
to the baba, right? To that lady, what use are we? And we could be, I think traditionally the answer's been that mama mboga doesn't have sufficient money to qualify to be advised by us. And it's a valid position because it is very expensive to provide advice, right? Your time is, but is there a way we can use new technology to be relevant to that lady, to that gentleman that's guarding us or guarding our compound, and to that gentleman that's cutting our hair? And so, can we use this new technology to be able to provide them the guidance? And the guidance is really simple, the same guidance that you need, which is, I'm going to retire when I'm 65, and that mama mboga will retire at 65, whether she likes it or not. Maybe it is voluntary, she's done, or involuntary, that she cannot do those functions anymore. But what's going to finance the next 20 years of her life, right? How much is it going to cost? Can we help her figure that out? Same for the askari, same for and so we have tools today, believe it or not. The only job is to get these tools in front of these people that actually need it. So the utility that we will deliver, our AI will deliver, and even us in the investment industry, is to be able to help such people. Yep. And then, all of these are tools.
Yeah, and then just to add on to that, you make really, really valid points, is as well as the tool is the right investment for that individual.
Yep.
Because what we find from time to time from our customer interviews is that people who should not be investing in risky assets are holding risky assets, and the ones who can take a little bit more risk aren't. So yeah, as an investment community, it's definitely our responsibility, and I know you're doing great work on that, to actually bring products that are well suited for the end client.
Yeah. And I think an imagination with the end consumer, the investor, our client. So for any investment professional who wants to reposition themselves better in an AI-powered environment 10 years from now, which could have radically changed, the safest thing to do is to align yourself with a customer in terms of your skill set. The more you align yourself with the customer, the more you'll be relevant in that environment. But what we can't really deny is that some mundane tasks will have to go, and quite a lot of them.
But my question is, why do you want to be doing the mundane task anyway?
Exactly. And this is really because this is a CFA conference, and there are so many people who are undertaking CFA. I think it's you just need to have this foresight that the environment is changing, and our relevance will be needed to be a lot more aligned with the customer to remain relevant.
That's true.
Yeah.
And actually, just to add on to that, all three of us are currently, again, if you keep the client at the end of your focal point, sharing information, you'll get there in a different way, but you're still growing together. So it's nice to see that we're all three of us work together.
Fantastic. I knew this was a tricky topic to be the last one, because you can keep guys here until 7. But we'll try. We are trying our best. So what are for those people who are listening? What are the 2-3 things you can advise them to position themselves better for those 10 years? What are some of the things they should be doing today? And maybe let me give a short story. When you were in campus, the guys who were paid well were the accountants. So everybody was doing accounting, whether you are you were doing medicine or engineering or whatever. You found yourself somewhere in Strathmore, you were doing CPA. But when I think about, those themselves today coming through the CFA levels, that they will be having high-flying jobs 10 years from now. Let's start from the middle.
Oh, okay, great. So I was actually thinking about my answer. The only thing I could say is, and this was the best advice, so I'm Kenyan born and raised. My dad runs a family business here, and he's got nothing to do with finance. And the only advice that till today resonates, and it's a personal story, I got in to do dentistry at a university in London. I was there for A-levels, and I remember doing I'm Kenyan, I remember doing the work experience after getting into university, and then realized I can't look into people's mouth every day. And in the end, I called my dad, and I was obviously emotional, and I said to him, I don't want to do dentistry, what can I do? And he said, do what makes you happy. So pursue something you're passionate about. At the age of 16, 17, you don't really know what you're passionate about, so I decided to do mathematics. And again, I don't know why I picked such a hard subject, because I could have done what I did by doing like industrial economics or something easy. I could have hacked the system, but of course, the advice was do something you're passionate about. And I think that is probably what I would recommend everybody who's studying the CFA, that it's such an extensive set of syllabus that there are things in there that you'll find passionate. And if you follow passion, that's where money comes. And I think if you're looking to figure out where you want to be in 10 years' time and you want to be successful, if you're passionate and you continue reading, learning. And the second piece of advice my dad gave me was go have coffees with everybody you know in the industry. Trust me, no one will say no to a coffee, because a research analyst, and really see, okay, what would I really excel with? And be true to yourself. Don't chase the money, because the money will come.
You've said a couple of things there, but I want to just underline one that is so important. Invest in relationships.
100%.
Don't just be a technician.
Yeah.
Invest in relationships.
And that's something AI can't replace.
Illusion, when he was at university, the people were doing well. He got pushed into SCCA. Did you actually do it?
CPA.
Oh, you did? Okay, very well. I did. So the part of the reason I tend to be a little restrained is like seeing into the future, which we all pretend to do in this room. Seeing into the future is very it's very difficult. Like basically what we sell is the future. You sell a future return, the future is going to be like this, you're going to retire happy if you do this, etc. But who really, really, really knows the future? Yeah. So we play God, yeah, even in providing that investment guidance or providing career guidance, yeah. So because your advice is really a function of what you know as at that point, like as at that point, unless you're an oracle, yeah. And there are oracles. I will not discount the possibility, but there's very, very, very few of them. And so, so because this is what we see, or this is what people saw back, I'm not sure what year that was. I'm going to guess it was 1985 for Pius. But so at that point, the people that had done well or were seeming to do well, etc., were in particular career paths, and naturally that is the guidance. And so I'm just thinking, I have little children, and I'm just thinking, am I the best person to actually guide them subsequently in their careers, what they should do, what they should. So with respect to specific careers, possibly not, because I don't know. I don't know. But there's specific skill sets that will necessarily always
Absolutely.
be useful. Numeracy is one of them. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. But also just basic literacy, the ability to convey information, whether it's written, verbal, or even visual as well, right? So that's really also going to be important. But more than anything, the ability to go into, which AI can do, to go into the room and sort of smell the room and have a sense of how the energy is flowing. And so just that social awareness, those are like important skill sets that would make you very valuable. Numeracy, that basic literacy, but also the ability to read human beings in a sense.
Again, back to how to relate with people.
People.
It's the one thing that AI cannot replace. Yeah. I would have had another question, but let me come to Valentine first. Valentine.
So I think similar to Aiko, I'll refrain from predicting the future. So I'll look to my past and looking at all the different people that I've had the privilege to work with through my career. Something, in finance, I think something that interesting that happens is you find people from so many different backgrounds being able to work in this industry. At Centum, we had people who were engineers, mechanical engineers, chemical doctors. Before that, I was at Morgan Stanley, same thing, people from the military and places like that. And it shows that it's not about what you studied, it's not about sort of your technical knowledge. I think what I've seen as the strain is curiosity. So being able to see something new and peer into it and want to learn a little bit more about it. And then over and above that, a little bit of tenacity. Just because you don't have the formal school education, you need to work at it to understand what it is that you're kind of being pushed into. And that's the thing that I would say over and above what Aiko and Radhika have said are important. And curiosity is very tied to people as well, because how do you know how do you decide what's interesting and how do you learn more without talking to people? So kind of underpinning, I think that's been the theme of today, is how important relationships are in this industry and beyond.
I really like the fact that you mentioned that word, curiosity, because AI is a product of curiosity.
Yeah.
The advancement,
Yeah.
enhancement of
Information.
AI
Yeah.
is going to be about curiosity. Can this be done this way, powered by AI?
Yes.
So that means it's an important thing about our human nature, how we were created to be curious, to be very aware and to develop it in such an environment. Yeah. Okay. So I think I want to open up the floor to want to welcome you to the feast. We are enjoying too much on this podium. Any questions? I can take 3 at a time.
Oh, no questions.
Okay, there is a question right there.
which is sometimes a good or bad.
Please say your name and then where you're from and then the question, and one question only per person. Yeah. Thank you. Fantastic.
I insist to my student that mathematics is the one that is actually going to fuel that data science that you're talking about, is the oil, the next big thing. But now you've brought in AI into it. Where does that student who has really worked so hard as a mathematician lie? And it is also worrying me because I have seen in the last 2 years, I have seen quite a rise in the enrollment in computer science. Is it what students should be looking for? What kind of people are you employing in that environment, in that industry? Next week, I'll be meeting a young student from Form 3 and Form 4. What should I tell them? Is it AI? Is it computer science? Is there space for mathematics still?
Thank you. I'll give it to you, Radhika, but let's see if there's another question. There's another question right there next to the camera.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My question goes not specifically to the panel, but maybe someone in the panel will have more information. I'm a bit off touch on the local capital markets, simply because I operate more outside, not in Kenya specifically. My curiosity is how freely data flows among the players here. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much machines you have, if the data is not big enough, then it's as good as a stalled car. Yeah, so I'm just curious on how freely, for example, Lion's Head or, fund managers share data among themselves.
Let's take up those two questions.
Yeah, sure. So you've asked a really valid question. So computer science is now being taught as a elementary module at high schools. So actually doing a degree in computer science is a little bit more redundant. And actually I'm not a technical individual, I'm all finance, but when I speak to my CTO and my developers, they say that a lot of the stuff that they had to do about 5 years ago was go in and code a particular screen. You now get templates for it. So actually, you ask a very, very correct question, and I would just like to leverage what Ikeo said, is that actually you need to do a degree that gives you the right skill set to help you excel in any role. And if I was to give myself advice, it's quite old, 16 years ago, I would say that I would have hacked the system, done something that still gives me a good educational module on the CV. I'm able to do analytical, numerical, logical thinking, relationship manager, empathy, recognize, and do that stuff rather than pick a particular degree. So it's not a direct answer, but the reality is that it's the skill set you learn that you can apply in any industry. And even going up, my co-founder, he's Kenyan as well, Rogito, did medicine and then did CPA. And so he's learned various skills and he's absolutely knowledgeable. But the thing that I see in him is that he can take the more macro skills that he's learned and apply it to a job. So again, I go back to what I said before, is do something you're passionate about and not because everyone's doing it. And I think that's where you really set yourself apart from the crowd, is when you do something you're passionate about, because that curiosity, like Valentine said, is the one that's going to take you further, not what you learn at school. And honestly, I've probably used 2% of my mathematics degree, and that's when I was calculating performance returns. That's about it. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, maybe just to add on to what Radhika had said, the so the I, when I'll just share my personal experience. When I was going through school, a Ugandan school. I don't know how it happens here. I don't know how it happens elsewhere, but Ugandan school, you start your O levels with maybe 13, 14, sometimes to the extreme 18 subject areas, and then you gradually narrow them down to 10. So I actually was stubbornly wanted to learn everything in the world. In fact, I attempted to read the entire, before Google, the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. There was a set at school. Because I really was curious to what are the areas, what knowledge have humans put together. So that really is helpful. Of course, I guess in your teenagers, you go slightly broad, and then in your 20s, there's some general advice out there. You go reasonably deep because you want to build a certain competence. And then I don't know what you do in your 30s, maybe drink beer, but but to narrow it down to the artificial intelligence and slightly more sophisticated things like that, there's particular things that are helpful. Not least of them, of course, understanding how human beings work, because you're trying to simulate the behavior of human beings, right? But very importantly, in order to be able to do that, there's a decent dose of advanced mathematics, advanced probability, advanced statistics. But you also want, because you're going to simulate these human beings using things in a particular course of study, either biology or information systems, it doesn't really matter. So you add on that. So when you have that equipment set, really, specifically this, I'm talking about the builders of artificial intelligence systems, you'll be well on your way to actually being a proficient artificial intelligence engineer.
Yeah. And as you were answering that question, I was just wondering, in terms of direction, in an AI-powered world, are people likely to be encouraged to be more broad-based in terms of their exposure or more specialized? Because when I think of, for example, this Tesla guy, what's his name? Elon Musk.
Somebody.
Musk. Yes, somebody.
That guy.
When I hear his story, he's really gone broad-based. And everything is so AI driven, but it really kind of pushes him to know a lot of stuff that naturally would not have learned in our traditional setting. What do you think? Just again, following up on his question. What would be the general direction?
I think it looks a little bit like an hourglass. So you start kind of wide. Is that right? You start wide and then you come thin and then you go wide again.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's important to have those skills that we're talking about, being able to understand many different things.
Yes.
So that the analytical ability, but you also need to be a subject matter expert in something.
Yes.
So you can apply it in a certain perspective.
Yeah.
Something I wish I saw more in applications that we get for our company is people who have both a technical skill and something a little bit more human oriented.
Yes.
One of the best candidates I've seen was a computer science major and also did something around neuroscience. So she understands how to code, she understands how to build systems, but she also understands how the mind works. And for me, that's kind of the combination that you want if you're going to go into something like AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So curiosity again.
Curiosity
will be at play.
So I actually think that the skills that we have and we take as for granted as this generation, we're all confident, we're able to get up on stage and speak to 100 people, being able to synthesize information when given data. is going to be skill set that our children are not going to build naturally simply because of the behaviors they have today. If you look at my nieces and nephews, they're glued to the phone, they're playing video games with other people online. They're not interacting with people, learning how to be empathetic towards them, understanding to read a room. And so perhaps you're absolutely right. You actually now need to go more broad than narrow. But there is some element of subject matter expertise that you do need to be good at something. But I fear for the generations to come where they just won't know how to interact on normal, be confident enough to get on stage and talk to someone. So that will be interesting to see how that sort of maps out and how these skills will become so valuable. And
there you go. So you need to be a subject matter expert, but curious, seriously curious in other areas.
There's a question that was asked.
Yes, there was a question around. I was coming to that.
Okay.
Do you want to take it? Or
I can take it, but I'll pass it down to you. He was asking about the flow of data. Data freely flow in the Kenyan market, right? Yeah. Kenyan market expert.
Yes. I was coming to that. So, in my observation, data is not freely flowing. We are not properly set up to really power ourselves up in an AI-driven environment. But again, we have the advantage that the industry is still so young that we have the advantage of starting things again, and with a purpose that we'll use technology to power us up for the next generations. So I see it more, we are the beginning stages. And I think the need to do that is what will really force us to come down and integrate things. Because if, for example, the business that I drive, I want to integrate with all these other players, the regulator, the markets, the capital markets, I'm forcing them to do something that they previously were not supposed to do. But there is a lot of sense in it. And when 2 or 3 other players do the same thing, then collectively, we will start seeing that data being released and flowing freely amongst us. Yeah.
Data security or privacy or anything. Like, what's the role of government? Because I think this is the point where we need more of a big brother pushing an industry. Or do you think it's a private players, self-regulation, self-sharing kind of a market?
My personal opinion, this is going to be innovation-led rather than government-led. But government is going to come strongly following innovation on things to do with data protection. We've just had the Safaricom Mali being launched. That is a big data player coming in right into our sector, and I'm sure that is going to touch a lot on data. There's going to be a lot of concern around data and flowing of data, and therefore I'm sure the regulators and the government will be a little bit more paying attention on that side of AI. Yeah.
But also, just to add on to that, I know that the regulators, the CMA, have been working on a East African treaty whereby there can be more facilitation of cross-country investments. But I know the bill has got stuck somewhere. So my request is to the regulators in the room, if you're still here, I see Keith and is that for new players coming into the market today, having that East African treaty, being able to passport not just your regulation, but also be able to share data amongst us would be such a great asset that we could actually use to grow the industry together. But so my request goes out to you is that if that bill can be resurfaced and signed off, it would make Akeo and my job a lot easier to help you cultivate the capital markets across East Africa. Yeah, just a polite request.
Thank you. You're using the right platform. Great. There was another question I saw.
Yeah.
There's a question there.
I was asking about.
Okay, there.
My name is Mwenda.
Sorry?
My name is Mwenda. I'm in finance.
Mwenda.
So I was asking about saying we field right now doing finance. Analytics is what is more relevant for you to make a decision, because with the softwares that we have, you can always get the balance sheet and other statements. But till late, I'll talk about data. If you look at Europe, is where they've started. Say they've gone strong on GDPR, that is the data relations. But in Africa, we've not done so much about that. But we've had data all over from time way back, but we never used to regulate that. But it came because of the malpractices that came with data. But now we have AI with us now. But there's some things that are happening, and with so much automation, some things are catastrophic. Like you see, where the crash that we had the other day, where say the autopilot the pilot will not control because of certain programming or so. So have we gotten to a place where we are having regulation to oversee what is stupid? Because at times, is it taking over what humans can do, and we are getting catastrophic results? Is there some oversight of sort, or what's the future about AI, or will it go unchecked? Yeah, that's my question.
Who wants to take that?
I can.
Okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, so with respect to, I'm not sure I understand the entire question, but with respect to GDPR and other data protection regulations, seems like every country or every region is crafting their own data protection. I think in Uganda there's one, I'm sure there's one in Kenya, because I found one in Nigeria as well, as we having discussions. Then there's, even in the States, there's several states that are, particularly California. So there is a huge move now based on the realization that technology and digital platforms are hoovering up a lot of data, personal data related to individuals. And that data is now used to market things at them that they've not necessarily indicated that they need. And so I think the basis of most regulation, and this is to the extent of my understanding, is with respect to, first of all, what permissions you have to gather that data, and what and whether or not you disclose what disclosures you have when you're gathering that data. But very importantly, for now, this maybe plays into the geopolitics a little bit. Where are you storing that data? How are you processing that data, right? And so, unfortunately, of course, for that debate is individual countries do not necessarily have all the technology local in that particular jurisdictions that they need to function as, that companies need to function. For example, you use Microsoft Word or Microsoft whatever, right? Or you use some software subscriptions that you subscribe to in order to process your accounting financials, etc., or to run your CRM. But a lot of these subscriptions, most of them are by subscriptions. Now they don't give you a CD that you can download and store in your local. A lot of them are in the cloud somewhere, and in that cloud, those cloud locations are maybe in South Africa, Cape Town, the Netherlands, or California. And so that debate basically comes there. But I think for most of the ordinances that we've seen, is as long as that data is stored in jurisdictions that have equivalent protections for the individual, that seems to be fine. And so that has been the traditional stance. So the local authorities here will require, wherever that data, wherever you have servers, storing personal data of Kenyans, that location should have protections that are equivalent to the local Kenyan regulations. That's, at least that's what happens in Uganda. That's what happens in Nigeria. I'm not quite certain. Maybe Pius and Radhika might chip in here, whether that's the same thing here. But that's the sort of thing that I've seen.
I think on the data side, you've really addressed it. There was a question around risk of AI. You know, like, would you comfortably enter into a driverless car? You know, and with this, should this be allowed to go on? This is kind of innovation unchecked. Just 2 seconds. I think we're running out of time. Valentine.
So there are a lot of laws around this, and I think going back to what we've been saying, AI can't exist without humans. And you'll see some of the laws that are coming up in the UK, the US, Canada, the places that he's mentioned. There's specific laws and regulation around robo-advisory, as an example, that you have to have human intervention over and above the AI, so that you don't give recommendations that may not understand the context of the customer at the end of the day. So I think there's a lot of thinking going into how do we protect people, especially people's money and people's lives, in respect to using technology that is, quote unquote, replacing humans, and how does a human provide that additional safety and oversight to make those things possible and comfortable.
Thank you. There was one more question. I think we can take that. There was another one there. Just those 2 questions, then we can close. Otherwise, it can be here until 6.
Thank you very much, and thank you, panelists, for a very good discussion. Earlier in the presentation, someone mentioned that Kenya has about 70% of the GDP comes from micro, small, and medium enterprises. And we know that one of the characteristics of these is that maybe their processes are manual or have basic automation. So the question I have in mind is, how do we participate in supporting these to maybe leapfrog from the manual process or basic automation to using AI to actually help them in the business? In that way, there would be business opportunities and investment opportunities. The second one is, from your experience and practice maybe, is there evidence of where you have 2 portfolios, one done using AI strictly and one done using human intervention, or maybe one done with both? And do you have an indication of which of the 3 portfolios would be most reasonable for one to invest in? Last but not least, yes, AI I think is very good in many areas, in construction, in agriculture, in dating. I'm actually told dating is one of the areas where it's doing very well. I don't know at the moment if there is one on marriage management, because those are some of the most difficult problems of human beings. So at the end of the day, really, it is using AI to solve human problems, identifying the problems and solving them. Thank you very much.
I believe the last part is where we said AI is limited. So Radhika, prepare to answer those questions as we take that one.
Hello. Hello. Hi. So I've had a question regarding use of algorithmic trading and AI for a while, and I've never really gotten a good answer to this, in the sense. So typically, when you invest in a security, whether it's a share or whatever, you're opining on its value. If we introduce now, if I think the numbers are around 70% of all New York Stock Exchange trades happen algorithmically. So I think my question to the panel would be that if we introduced AI or any form of big data based trading, are we getting rid of the alpha that is generated by active fund managers by opining on a specific stock. So essentially, like if all of us analysts here decided that Google's worth $1, tomorrow it will end up being worth $1 because we will just all sell it till it becomes worth $1. Now, what happens if an algorithm decides that, and does that just take away the entire alpha, and that everyone's just going to get the same exact return?
So you have a perfect market situation. That's what you're saying. Okay. Aiko, you'll take that.
Yeah.
Radhika.
Okay, so I will start with your question. So I hear you that our informal sector contributes to 70% of GDP. I think it's a great space to play in. And to answer your question, there are a lot of new innovative companies, early stage companies like ourselves, that are working towards addressing and empowering them in a very easy way. So a few of them, so firstly, Twiga, you've all heard of Twiga. They, reduce the inefficiency across the supply chain, meaning that the farmer got more in his pocket. That's a really good example of how they use software and some level of AI to have that done. There's another one, Market Force Kiosk. We're also working with a mass market play now to really give them tools without them recognizing it's AI, because that would be the wrong thing to do. And so there's a lot of our industry players that are working in this space, and I would encourage even more traditional asset managers to come play in this space by partnering with early stage companies. The second question you had was around, do I have any, or do we have any data on portfolio returns completed by AI versus an active portfolio manager? If I go back my memory, there is some examples, but all of them have biases. Yes, AI-driven portfolio that's been designed to only track the market and not actually make any, so passive investing, has performed in line with a manual guy who's gone and said, okay, I'm going to track the entire index. Because that's just passive. There are some examples, and again, I'm not well versed to speak on this, but there are some examples where you could compare an AI portfolio to a manual. And the only thing I can draw upon is, whilst I was at BlackRock, we had a equity fund that was running a lot of leverage. And the only difference the AI made, and the learning we got from those two portfolios, was that in a downturn where a human will react emotionally despite having all the data. So this was when Brexit was happening and the GBP fell. The portfolio managers were working overnight, everyone was in the office, and what actually happened was the portfolio that was running AI, even though it had been programmed to learn about currency ups and downs, it actually ended up performing better because it didn't feel the pressure of the news and everything else that's going around emotionally to press sell. Whereas the portfolio that was actually running by a human who understood the impact of Brexit from a different perspective actually sold out at a different position. So this portfolio, just because it was non-emotional, did better. But I wouldn't say that's an example of how AI has done better. So it's almost, again, going back to the fact that AI needs to work collaboratively with humans in order to be optimal, because there could be different situations where AI could fail and the human aspect of asset management could really make a difference. Those are my thoughts. Unless, do you have anything else to add?
Not about AI and human relationships, certainly not. But I just want to, the question that he posed there, is there possibility for us to achieve, I'm not sure that is the phrasing, AI supremacy, and therefore leading us to a perfectly efficient market, right? Eliminating any sort of alpha, right? And so this is a question I asked myself when I was a graduate student too. Is it absolutely possible? I remember debating my professor then. But from observation, and again, this is very limited observation, it's not really benchmarked on industry studies or whatever, is every shop, like every trading house, etc., has a bunch of engineers programming computers, programming the AIs to compete away or compete against other programming shops that are basically attacking the same market. And so AI is really configured in a sense, at least initially. Of course, there are those that program themselves, right? They learn on their own. But initially, there's some information that is fed in, and then you feed in a corpus of knowledge, and then you can let them go on their own. But you find over time that everyone is feeding in their own factors or their own limits or their own whatever. And just because of that, necessarily there will not, there's a very small likelihood that they will at one point all act in concert. But of course, we've seen situations, especially in the relatively more developed markets, where most automated programming systems react similarly and therefore exacerbate the volatility during a particular window. But I don't know that that is necessarily sustained over a significant period of time. That's as much as I can say, really.
Yeah. And maybe just to add on to that, the only way it's possible for us to arrive at a perfectly efficient market, it has to be two assumptions. Number one, all market players must use the same AI tool. Number two, the entire investment decision must be AI driven and nobody else. No human intervention. So, but we all know that that cannot be true. And because investment is futuristic and algorithms are developed by human beings, humans will always have an edge over the algorithms because algorithms have to be updated with new information, new trends. And therefore, the alpha will always be there because investment will always be a byproduct of AI plus HI, AI plus artificial intelligence plus human intelligence. So there will always be alpha. But probably the alpha will reduce significantly.
It's true. Passive investing.
Yeah. So I think let's go to the parting shots. I think you've had enough break. We can start with you. Yes.
So I think to end, what I would say is, like Radhika said at the beginning, in the movies you hear about AI being this thing that comes and takes over the universe. And there's this movie that comes to mind, I think it was called Life, where this little blob thing became a monstrous thing. And I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think of AI. But I like to think of it more like a tool. It's something that will help us be more efficient. It will help us do our jobs better. It will help us serve our clients better in so many ways. And it will, stop us from having to go through all these manual processes. If I go back to the beginning story of the M-Pesa statement, imagine how much time it would have taken for a human being to first categorize the transactions, go through all the statements, and then come and say, oh, all these things are this one category, and here's an opportunity for you to redirect these funds to investment. It will help us do way more in our lifetime and in our careers. So I would say, stay curious, read a little bit about AI here and there, watch a movie, read a book, and see how you can integrate it into your career. It will definitely help you in the long run.
And so I would say that the only way AI can be adopted well in this market is if our data infrastructure is correct and well organized. So like someone mentioned earlier we're still a very new early industry. We could now take action today to make sure that our data infrastructure is being structured in the right way that will allow AI to actually help us do our jobs easier. So at Dovu, we've really brought in a data consultant, figure out how to organize our data. I think that will help you and save you a lot of time and effort when the market does see that change. So it's something that you should be thinking about. And then just to echo Valentine, educate yourself, stay close to the news, see what's happening in other markets, and see if you can use it as your competitive edge.
Yeah, in my case, this entire thing called life is like, honestly, I think a huge experiment, in the sense that new technologies come, and then we evolve out of our current situation. If we hadn't evolved, we would still be living on trees, right? No? Yeah, we would still be living on trees. And so there is going to be a new world that is slightly different. My suspicion that new world, subsequently, I don't know when it will happen, but we are likely to evolve even out of wearing trousers, right? Yeah, so but this is how it will happen. I honestly think it will happen, though the guys who are making movies about 1,000 years from now still have humans wearing trousers. I don't know what they're thinking, but yeah, yeah. So I think we should be relatively open. This is the only way to run or participate in this human experiment. Relatively open with new technologies, new ways of looking at things, new ways of helping ourselves achieve those objectives. There is a huge opportunity to deploy this new technology to help that Mama Mboga, to help that Askari, to help that Baba. Let's take advantage of it. We will learn. If there are any downsides, we will learn how to deal with them, but let's just do it.
Thank you very much for those closing remarks. I have noted four important takeaways from our conversation. Number one is that AI is here to empower us, not to replace us, not to replace human beings. However, number two, AI will certainly disrupt. And therefore, we must position ourselves better. And the best way to position ourselves, that brings me to point number three, we must align ourselves with customers to remain relevant. It's the only way, it's the only insurance to remain relevant in an AI-powered environment. Number four, it's going to be a journey. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Suddenly, it's a journey. It's already started, and it's going to evolve. And as Bill Gates said, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. So think about 10 years from now, not necessarily 2 years from now, but things will certainly change. It's been a pleasure to host you amazing panelists and to engage you amazing participants. Thank you very much. Back to you, MC.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proper round of applause to Pius and his team. That was geeky, right? Thank you so much, guys. Another round of applause to Ms. Kiwanika, who led the mental health session on the other side of the room. And they're now back here. So let's clap for them also as well, please.
Well done.
Let's get a picture.
Great. Happy feeling. This is one of those things AI can't do for you. Answer me. How are you feeling? Has it been great?
Yes.
Yeah?